Hello and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, and today I thought I would talk about vanilla cultivation, and particularly about its pollination, because I didn't know about this and it's quite interesting. But we'll do a gentle introduction about what vanilla is and where it comes from. So vanilla is an orchid, and you harvest the seed pods and the seeds inside it, and that is what is used for flavouring in all things like ice cream and custard, things like this. So it's an orchid, but I actually thought it was from Madagascar because that's where all vanilla comes from. Turns out it's not. It's from Central America, and that's an issue when you come to cultivate it anywhere outside of Central America, because it lacks the native stingless bees that would pollinate the orchid flowers. So all vanilla crops outside of its natural distribution have to have man-made, a human to pollinate every single flower that produces a pod. That becomes an issue. Now, for some crops, hand pollination is not such an issue, like tomatoes. You just give them a shake or vibrate the plant and they will self-pollinate. However, that won't be the case in vanilla, because vanilla has a flap of tissue called a rosellum. A rostulum, that separates the male parts, the anthers, from the female parts, the stigma. And this barrier prevents easy self-pollination and requires precise manipulation to move the pollen from one anther to the stigma. And it's not, the thing about orchids is although they produce tiny seeds, their pollen are actually put into pollen sacs, and they're very large. They're not dust. They don't just fly around in the air, the dust. It requires specific picking up the pollen sac and sticking it on the female part. So it requires time and it requires training, and these things will limit the growth of the vanilla pods. In the wild, as I said, it's almost exclusively pollinated by stingless bees. Melipona is the genus. And so Madagascar and Indonesia are the main areas where there are vanilla cultivation. Madagascan vanilla is famed, but Indonesia has caught up, and also places like Nepal and India are looking to grow big vanilla crops because it is an expensive crop, very expensive. If you can get it right, there are riches to be had, and a lot of vanilla is synthetically synthesized, but this is inferior to the real thing. It's always considered inferior. So the flowers are also short-lived, so they stay open for only 6 to 12 hours on one morning, and if it's not pollinated in that window, it dies. And so you need staff there the whole time pollinating. So you can see why the farmers are asking plant breeders to breed a self-pollinating variety, and they're looking to breed ones that don't have their flap of tissue, the rostulum, in there, so that they can more easily be self-pollinated. Oh, it's going to be tricky on this one because the pollen's not powder where it can just vibrate the plant. So I'm not sure if it's going to be possible. It has to be done by hand. The farmers use a small stick or needle to lift that rostulum up and manually press the pollen onto the stigma. That's labour-intensive, slow, and requires skill, as we've said. And a single worker will have to pollinate hundreds to thousands of flowers every day during peak blossom. But mistakes are common, and sometimes if you get one worker who's not doing their job properly, then you can waste lots and lots of flowers and lots of plants. Over-pollination can cause lower quality beans as well. So one plant can only support a limited number of beans. So too many pollinated flowers leads to small, low-quality beans and stressed vines. So farmers must be careful to limit and select the flowers they're going to pollinate. So more training, more experience required. And you can see why the best growers get the highest rewards. It's not a case of everyone gets paid the same. And then obviously the issues around vanilla cultivation. Vanilla orchids when you get orchid growing wrong, it can grow seriously wrong and you can lose all your crop, just like we saw with the Dutch orchid growers where the vents wouldn't open because there was a power cut and they could see thousands and thousands of their plants dying because they knew they would die because they got too hot. It requires very specific humidity, shade and temperature controls. Even that's just for the flowers to open, never mind for the plants to survive. And the weathers can reduce the bloom and shorten the pollination window. And then you've got the issue of once they're pollinated, the plant has to actually develop the fruit. The vanilla can take 3 to 4 years before it's mature enough to produce flowers. And even then, it will only produce a couple of flowers until it's really fully matured. And then once pollinated, it can take another 8 to 9 months for a pod to mature post-pollination. So that is massive. That's the same time scale as a human gestation period. So that must be one of the longest periods of any fruit crop to mature, I would guess. If you think of another one that's longer than that, maybe durian or something like that. And then after harvest, the pod needs to be cured, so dried and allowed to rest in a controlled environment. And that can go wrong, and you can get rots involved in that. Anyone who's done curing in other crops like legal cannabis or tobacco will know that is an issue. So I wouldn't want to be a vanilla farmer unless the rewards were going to be massive. Root rot is a massive issue in vanilla growing, and they're looking to produce hybrid vanillas from not just the standard species that's used. So the standard species is Vanilla planifolia. Doesn't have a common name that I'm aware of, but they're looking to breed that with, what's the other species called? Pompona, for better root rot resistance and resilience to environmental fluctuations. So if they were possible, then you could get much better crops throughout the world. So yeah, that's an interesting one. What else can we say about vanilla cultivation and hydroponics specifically? It's important to note that vanilla is a vine, so lots of tropical orchids are actually epiphytes, where they live in the trees, whereas vanilla is a vine, so it can grow in soil. So you can do soil cultivation, but a lot of modern vanilla farms are now using tower hydroponic systems that allow moisture to ooze out all along the stem, the tower, because obviously it's a vine, so it wants to grow up, it wants to get height, and so tower-based hydroponic systems suit it down to the ground. So that's been a short dive into pollination in vanilla and some other aspects of growing vanilla crops. The active ingredient in vanilla is vanillin, I think it's called, and you get about 2% in a pod. So compared to like synthetic material, which is 100% pure, probably about 99% pure, but is not as good because probably a few other biochemicals in there add to the flavour and the texture and things like this. So hopefully you found that interesting. If you did, please leave us a review for Hydroponics Daily on Apple. And make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. It is a daily episode. And if you're new to hydroponics, check out some of the earlier episodes because we did an introduction into various different methods of growing hydroponically in there, and all the nutrients and all the pest and disease, whereas these are more crop specific topics and interesting news articles. What else can we say? And if you're looking for something new to add to your hydroponic setup, check out utrema.co.uk because we have completely unique hydroponic inputs that you won't find anywhere else. So always good to check out what we're up to, ever expanding portfolio of new and interesting technology. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.
Hydroponics daily on my feed, they spitting seeds, talking orchids, pods hanging like nature's rosary beads. Pollination manual hands like a surgeon, scalpel split the stigma, play Cupid the bees, not at the chapel. Yeah. Greenhouse buzzing, no insects, the vibe artificial. Every pod's potential's official, growth exponential, takes a human touch, a brush, a careful little tickle. Vanilla gold dripping, flavor so fickle. Yeah. Pollinate the vanilla, touching the threads, make the flowers whisper, sweet secrets unsaid. No bees in the business, it's human instead. Pollinate the vanilla, life in the spread, yeah. Pollinate the vanilla, life in the spread, yeah. Pollinate the vanilla, life in the spread, yeah. Orchid blooms for a day, blinking it's a wrap. Time is like a drum line, miss it in the scrap. Hydro heads in the lab, no dirt, it's clean. Roots sipping nutrient streams, plants living the dream. Epidendrum vibes, but we're cloning the scene. Vanilla's DNA decoded like a machine. Mother Nature outsourced, we're taking the lead. Every pod we harvest, a miracle indeed. Yeah. Hydroponics daily, they talking my obsession. Flavor of the gods, vanilla's my profession. No shortcuts here, just labor and precision. Every pollinated bloom, a calculated decision. Yeah. Pollinate the vanilla, touching the threads. Make the flowers whisper, sweet secrets unsaid. No bees in the business, it's human instead. Pollinate the vanilla, life in the spread. Yeah.